I'll wait till you've... Oh. Hare Krishna. We'll start again. Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Vihari like to ask TJ, tablet jockey, if he could put the verse. It's already on the screen. So we're reading from the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, text 59. Thanks, Prema. So we're going to have it up on the screen here. But before we read from the Bhagavad Gita, we usually recite a little mantra, invocation. It should be...
Which text?
Oh yeah, that's the one. That's the one. 259, yeah. And you can just maybe make it bigger and that. So we're just going to recite a little invocation before we read from the Bhagavad Gita, which creates auspiciousness. So everyone can repeat after me. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 So this is chapter 2 of the Bhagavad Gita, which is entitled Contents of the Gita Summarized. And this is text 59. So we'll go through the Sanskrit. If everyone can repeat after me. Vishaya,
Vishaya,
Vinivatante,
Vinivatante,
Vishaya, Vinivatante,
Vishaya, Vinivatante,
Niraharasya,
Niraharasya,
Dehina,
Dehina,
Niraharasya Dehina,
Niraharasya Dehina,
Rasa,
Rasa,
Vajam, Raso, Pyasya, Rasavajam Rasopyasya,
Rasavajam Rasopyasya,
Param, Drishtva, Nivartate. Okay, so we'll try it from the top. Vishya Vinivatante,
Vishya Vinivatante,
Niraharasya Dehina,
Niraharasya Dehina,
Rasavajam Rasopyasya,
Rasavajam Rasopyasya,
Param Drishtva Nivartate,
Param Drishtva Nivartate,
Vishaya Vinivatante,
Vishaya Vinivatante,
Niraharasya Dehina,
Niraharasya Dehina,
Rasavajam Rasopyasya,
Rasavajam Rasopyasya,
Param Drishtva Nivartate,
Param Drishtva Nivartate,
Vishaya Vinivatante,
Vishaya Vinivatante,
Niraharasya Dehina,
Niraharasya Dehina,
Rasavajam Rasopyasya,
Rasavajam Rasopyasya,
Param Drishtva Nivartate.
Param Drishtva Nivartate.
Men, would anyone like to have a go reciting?
Vishaya Vinavatante,
Vishaya Vinivatante,
Niraharasya Dehina,
Niraharasya Dehina,
Rasavajam Rasopi Asya,
Rasavajam Rasopyasya,
Param Drishtva Nivartate,
Param Drishtva Nivartate,
Vishaya Vinivartante,
Vishaya Vinivartante,
Niraharasya Dehina,
Niraharasya Dehina,
Savajam Raso Apiyasya,
Rasavajam Rasopyasya,
Param Drishtva Nivartate,
Param Drishtva Nivartate. Very good. Any of the ladies like to have a go?
Visaya Vinivartante,
Vishaya Vinivatante,
Niraharasya Dehina,
Niraharasya Dehina,
Rasavajam Rasopi Asya,
Rasavajam Rasopyasya,
Param Drishtva Nivartate,
Param Drishtva Nivartate. Anyone else feeling brave? Any of the other ladies like to have a go?
Vishaya Vinivartante,
Vishaya Vinivatante,
Niraharasya Dehina,
Niraharasya Dehina,
Rasavajam Rasopisya,
Rasavajam Rasopyasya,
Param Drishtva Nivartate,
Param Drishtva Nivartate. Very good, thank you. So we go through the word for word. You can can maybe do the word for word as well, Vinay. Vishaya, objects for sense enjoyment.
Objects for sense enjoyment.
Vinivatante, are practiced to be refrained from.
Are practiced to be refrained from.
Niraharasya, by negative restrictions.
By negative restrictions.
Dehina, for the embodied.
For the embodied.
Rasavajam, giving up the taste.
Giving up the taste.
Rasa, sense of enjoyment.
Sense of enjoyment.
Happy,
Although
there is. Asya, his. Param, far superior things. Dristva, by experiencing. Nivartate, he ceases from. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Stacey Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. Okay. The embodied soul may be restricted from sense enjoyment, though the taste for sense objects remains. But ceasing such engagements by experiencing a higher taste, he is fixed in consciousness. Please repeat. The embodied soul may be restricted from sense enjoyment, though the taste for sense objects remains. But ceasing such engagements by experiencing a higher taste, he is fixed in consciousness. Purport. Okay, unless one is transcendentally situated, it is not possible to cease from sense enjoyment. The process of restriction from sense enjoyment by rules and regulations is something like restricting a diseased person from certain types of eatables. The patient, however, neither likes such restrictions nor loses his taste for eatables. Similarly, sense restriction by some spiritual process like Ashtanga Yoga in the matter of yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, etc. is recommended for less intelligent persons who have no better knowledge. But one who has tasted the beauty of the Supreme Lord Krishna in the course of his advancement in Krishna consciousness no longer has a taste for dead material things. Therefore, restrictions are there for the less intelligent neophytes in the spiritual advancement of life. But such restrictions are only good until one actually has a taste for Krishna consciousness. When one is actually Krishna conscious, he automatically loses his taste for pale things. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshuram Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Caitanya Vallabha Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupakadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sargajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadhuitam Savadutam Parijna Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabando Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavanishwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priyari Vanchakalpa Trubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda. Now everyone, very loudly. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vishya Vinivatante Niraharasya Dehina Rasavajam Vasopyasya Param Dristra Nivatate. The embodied soul may be restricted from sense enjoyment, though the taste for sense objects remains. But ceasing such engagements by experiencing a higher taste, he is fixed in consciousness. So as we mentioned before the kirtan, right now we're on the theme of the characteristics of a self-realized person. You know, like many people, may claim to be enlightened or may claim to be spiritually advanced or Krishna conscious, whichever phrase you may want to use, but there are actually symptoms of one who's Krishna conscious or one who's enlightened. So Krishna describes many of these different symptoms in a series of verses. So this one tonight is describing that one loses one's taste or one loses one's attraction for engaging in material activities or sensual pursuits just to gratify the senses. One gets a higher taste and one is no longer attracted to engage in material activities anymore. That's something that we can all judge for ourselves according to how much we still have a taste to engage in material enjoyment. To that degree we're, advanced or not in spiritual life. So in spiritual life, it's described that there's two types of persons in spiritual life. Well, not necessarily spiritual life, in life in general. There's one who's called a Goswami, and there's one who's called a Godas. So Goswami, Swami means master, and Go means senses. So a Goswami means master of the senses. And similarly, Go is senses, and Das means servant. So a Godas is one who is a servant of the senses. So Godas, servant of the senses, and Goswami is the master of the senses. So for one who wants to make advancement in spiritual life, it is recommended that one has to become a Goswami. One has to become a master of his senses. Because unless one can control his senses or her senses, then invariably what happens is the senses control them. Someone's in control. Either you're in control of your senses or your senses are in control of you. So just like if you look at a dog, put your hands up here if you have a dog. Does anyone here have a dog? Dennis.
Yeah.
So, okay Dennis, when you take what's your dog's name by the way?
Charlie and Tara.
Two, Charlie and Tara. So what happens when you take Charlie and Tara for a walk, usually?
They get very excited.
They get very excited. Do they sometimes, pull you, while you're taking them for a walk? They pull off in one direction?
We put them in the car and let them straight out.
Oh, okay, that's good. So you take them to a waste ground or a park or something. But anyway, the point we're getting at is that when you've got a dog, quite often it will run off because maybe it's seen another dog, maybe it wants to sniff another dog's behind, maybe it wants to sniff the lamppost where another dog's been. And generally when you see a dog, you don't usually see a dog that's very peaceful. In the sense of, they're usually quite, like you say, excited, a little bit agitated. And generally, dogs, the senses are kind of controlling them. As soon as it smells something, it immediately has to chase after it. Or as soon as it sees someone else, or maybe someone comes to the house that they don't know, starts barking. I remember my grandma used to have a Doberman when I was younger, and they had a big orchard at the back, and at some point some youths were breaking into the orchard, so they got this guard dog, and every time the doorbell went, this Doberman would just go ape, or it would go dog, it wouldn't go ape, it would go dog. It would just start, woofing, and it would just bark, and it would go and, try and attack whoever was coming in. So the point is that generally the dog, they're not in control of their senses are in control of them. And therefore they're not usually very peaceful. And similarly ourselves, now if you think about it, like if you're walking down the street and you're walking past like a baker's, who likes the smell of fresh baked bread? I don't think there's one person alive who doesn't like the smell of fresh baked bread. So you know what it's like, sometimes you're walking down the street and then, you just immediately, you can't just sniff of something nice, So, sometimes we do act like that, but we can't be like the dog necessarily and just, quick, you're in there. You may be, but the point is if your senses are in control of you all the time, then you'll never be peaceful, you'll always be agitated, and they'll be kind of running your life. They'll drag you all over the place. So I'm going to ask a question now. Who here has ever been in a situation and I'm going to ask you to put your hands up. Who here has ever been in a situation when they've said something or done something which they didn't want to do, or at some point later on they regretted what they did? Put your hands up if you've done that before. You've either said or done something. Yeah, quite a few. Is anyone feeling brave enough to maybe give an example of something you said or did which you...
It's not a really bad one, so I'll tell you, but I was speaking to this student, and they were devotees as well, you know, in the kitchen. We were chopping blankets together. And I said, oh, so what are you studying? And then they told me, and then it just leapt straight out of my mouth, the frog of offence. And I said, oh, that sounds really boring, you know. They were just really polite and humble, like, yeah, you know.
But they may have been offended, right? Politely they were, you know, they didn't react, but inside you may have hurt them, right?
I did, yeah.
So how did you feel afterwards?
I felt terrible, yeah. I thought, oh God, the frog of offence jumped out of my mouth once again.
Thanks for sharing that with us. Anyone else ever been in an experience? Okay, I'll maybe give you an example of myself. You know, you buy a packet of chocolate bars, for instance, you know, and there's like 8 chocolate bars in there, Kit Kat, for instance, and then, you know, you think, okay, I'm going to have 1 Kit Kat. But then you have one, and then you have another, then you have another, then you have another. Before you know it, you've eaten 8 Kit Kats. Maybe it's just me. I'm like that. If I buy some chocolate, then I can't just eat it moderately. I just have to eat the whole thing. And I think, you know, I'm trying to get fit, or I'm trying to get healthy. Anyone else have any examples of things you've said or done which you later on regretted? Everyone's gone shy now. Someone must have an example. Come on, give us an example. Maybe something you said to a work colleague. Maybe you said something, they were winding you up and you said something, or to a family member. Anyone ever had an experience like that?
Can I tell one thing?
Rama, please, yeah, tell us.
In York, we had Rath Yatra, no?
In York?
Yeah, in York we had Rath Yatra.
Oh, you had the Rath Yatra in York, yes.
And there I saw some devotees beating the drums, and they were enjoying themselves. I thought I would ask them if I could do something. And I asked one devotee, can I get you something? And he said, yes. And what is that? Would you go to Marks and Spencer and get four packets of honey roasted cashew nuts? And then you get 4 of them, and then cottage cheese, another 3 packets of cottage cheese. I thought that was very good. And when I went there, I saw each packet costed the honey roasted chocolate. They're 6 pounds each one.
6 pounds each.
Oh my God.
Just less than 6 pounds.
Yeah.
And then I thought I would just take only one, because that's a bit too much. And then I got cottage cheese, 1 packet, and I took it to them, and they took it happily. But I thought that I should have asked them fully and to tap their desires.
So you signed yourself up for something you wish you hadn't signed yourself up for.
That's right.
Okay, nice. Thanks for sharing that with me. It can be in many different circumstances. Okay, let me ask another question. Who here has ever had an argument with their wife, or their husband, or their partner? Put your hands up if you've ever done that before. Who's ever said something in the heat of the argument and felt like, oh, I wish I hadn't done that? You know, you get the idea. The point is, our senses get the better of us. You know, we've got 6 senses actually. We've got the sense of sight, we've got the sense of smell, sense of taste, the sense of hearing, sense of touch, and then the mind is also considered the 6th sense. So therefore, when our senses are uncontrolled, or in other words, when our senses are controlling us, we end up getting ourselves into a lot of trouble. sometimes. Maybe we sign ourselves up to buy things that are too expensive, or we say something we shouldn't, or we've said something that, we've got into an argument with our other half or something like that. It's happened to all of us. But the point is, it's as a result of having uncontrolled senses. So therefore, to control our senses is very important. Even just, we're speaking spiritually, but even just to speak about from a material point of view. If you want to be successful in anything, right, let's say you're studying or you're working, you have to have some level of discipline and you have to have some level of self-control. Is that a fair assumption? Is that a fair statement? Does anyone disagree with that? No. Like, we have some students here. Put your hands up if you're a student. Now, when I was a student, I don't know if it's the same nowadays, but studying was more or less a euphemism for partying. I notice a lot of the time international students, they're much more focused, because they have to pay a lot more money for their studies, But certainly homegrown students, not everyone, it's a sweeping statement, but I was more interested in, going out and having a good time, and then you get up late, so you miss your lecture, and you think, well, it's okay, I'll miss that lecture, and then you miss your seminar, and then maybe you procrastinate and you leave your essays till the last minute, you don't do any revising. You get the idea. If that's your approach to your studies, you're not really going to be very successful, or even just from a work perspective. You have to have some level of discipline, you have to have some level of self-control, you have to be in control of your senses, even though you may think, okay, I want to go out and party tonight, but I've got an exam tomorrow, therefore I'm going to resist the urge. My mind is telling me to go out, but I'm going to resist the urge and I'm going to stay in and I'm going to revise. Actually, there's two types of happiness that are described in the Vedic understanding. There's what's called prayas, and then there's what's called shreyas. So prayas means immediate happiness. In other words, if I go out tonight and have a good time, that'll bring some immediate satisfaction. But then tomorrow when I've got my exam and I don't know anything, then it brings suffering. So shreyas means that you forego the immediate happiness. Yeah, it would be nice to go out tonight, but if I stay in and undergo some voluntary austerity and I work hard for my exam tomorrow, then in due course that happiness will pay off. So it's like long-term happiness, prayas and shreyas. So generally, if we're controlled by our senses, it's because we want something instant. People take intoxication or something like this just to forget about the worries, to block out. But even to, like we said, to be successful materially, then you have to learn to control your senses. So what to speak of spiritually? If you want to achieve self-realization, if you want to become Krishna conscious, if you want to become enlightened, then you really have to work at it. You have to be disciplined. You have to be self-controlled. You have to control your senses. Sometimes people, they don't like the idea of being controlled, that you have to follow some rules and regulations. Right? In spiritual life, a lot of people like to have the idea that it's just whatever goes, whatever you want to do. Who's ever heard people saying like that, or maybe even thought like that themselves, that spiritual life just means whatever's good for me? Okay, who likes to follow rules and regulations? Put your hands up. Some of you. Who doesn't like to follow any rules and regulations? Who doesn't like to be told what to do? Who likes to think, I know what I'm doing, I don't need anyone else to tell me what to do, I can work it out for myself? Who thinks like that? Yeah. But the point is that if some advice is good for us, then we should accept it. If I say to you, if we say to a child, don't put your hand in that flame, is that good advice or is it bad advice? It's good advice. What does the child think? Does he think it's good or bad? No, he wants to do whatever he likes. But he'll find out the hard way. He'll learn from the school of hard knocks. If he puts his hand in the flame, he'll get burnt, and then he'll realise, no, this was good advice. So sometimes we also learn through the school of hard knocks. There's different types of intelligence. Srila Prabhupada describes as first class intelligence, second class, third class, and then 10th class intelligence. So first class intelligence means we hear something and then we act upon it. So we hear that it's bad to steal, therefore we don't steal. Never steal, because you've heard it's bad to steal. So that's first class. Then second class means you've heard it's bad, but then you're not quite sure, but then you see someone else being punished for stealing, so therefore you accept. This is second class. Then third class intelligence means we hear, we see it, but we're still not quite convinced, so we go ahead and we steal, and then we're punished. And then we think, okay, no, I'll never steal again. That's third class intelligence. And then Prabhupada describes 10th class intelligence means you hear, you see it, you experience it for yourself, but still you carry on doing it. That's 10th class intelligence. We never learn. So sometimes we have to learn from the school of hard knocks. So the point we're making is we may not always want to follow rules and regulations, but if we know something's good for us and we've established that it is good to have some level of discipline, some level of self-control. We all agreed on that. You all signed up for that by your agreement. So similarly, in spiritual life, it's important to control our senses because there's many distractions on the path of spiritual life. I mean, even this evening, you've all come here, but at some point you may have thought, you've all come here with the intention that you want you want to associate with like-minded people, spiritually minded people, or you may you're curious, you want to learn a little bit more about the Bhagavad Gita, or maybe you come every week and you're steadily making spiritual progress. But some of us, we may have thought, oh, I'm not going to bother going tonight. I can go next week, Or we may have had this experience before. There's many different distractions on the path of spiritual life. Let's ask for a few distractions. Anyone can think of what things distract them. Even though we're trying to practice spiritual life, what things distract us? Let's have some examples.
Family.
Family. Can you explain what you mean by that?
Well, instead of going on pilgrimage, then you might go on a mundane holiday with your family instead.
Okay, so... Sure. Okay, so, we may, like you say, you give the example, you may want to go on a pilgrimage to a holy place, but instead you go on a kind of
Ibiza.
To Ibiza to gratify your senses. Okay, good. Any other distractions we experience just on a practical day-by-day level? Julian? Foods.
Hunger,
Hunger. Oh, okay, so you mean that it's hard to practice, like, for instance...
Self-restraint, yeah.
Oh, self-restraint when it comes to eating, like we were given the example about eating 8 Kit Kats instead of 1. Yeah, okay, so that's like the demands of the tongue. Yeah. What other distractions are there in everyday life when we're trying to practice spiritual life? Money. What do you mean by that? How's that a distraction?
You've got to keep your money safe in the first place.
Uh-huh.
And then, if you want to spend it, you have to spend it wisely.
Uh-huh.
If you're not going to spend it wisely, you're just wasting your time, your money.
Uh-huh. Okay, so we may spend our money on the wrong things. Is that kind of what you mean? Okay. How's about okay, Vrinda, what other distractions are there in life? Television. Okay, put your hands up if you become distracted by the television. Yeah. Actually, that's a big thing, and certainly for spiritual life, it's important to get up early. Early to bed, early to rise, makes a man healthy, wealthy and wise. So, I personally find it hard to go to bed early. When I lived in the temple, when I lived in the ashram, it was very easy to go to bed early because I didn't have so many distractions, I didn't have a television in my living room. I was happy just doing some reading and then I would go to bed. And I would go to bed sometimes, I would go to bed at 7:30 at night and I would get up at 1:30 in the morning. And I would do that regularly. But nowadays, if you're ever watching something on the television, a documentary or a box set, who here's ever watched a box set? They make them so addictive, so that you get to the end of one season or one episode and you think, oh, what's going to happen next? So you think, well, I'll just watch one more. Then an hour's gone. Then you watch another one, then another hour's gone. Then you watch another one, then another hour's gone. And then before you know it, it's the early hours, and then you can't wake up early. You can't engage in your spiritual practices, so that's a distraction, the television, yeah. Okay, what else? What other distractions are there?
Facebook.
Phone. You were saying the phone. Yeah. Who gets distracted? Facebook. That was another one. WhatsApp.
Social media in general.
Social media in general. So many distractions. Yeah. Who at night time before they go to bed spends like 10 or 15 minutes on Facebook before they go to bed? Yeah. So and by the way, we're not saying that these things are bad. We'll clarify that in a minute. But because we can also utilize these things for a spiritual purpose. Like right now, our class, hello to everyone online, is being broadcast live on Facebook. So don't get us wrong, we're not against these things. But the point is we shouldn't become distracted from what our real purpose is. So when you go on those 10 or 15 minutes at night time of Facebook, is it generally just something mundane that you're looking at? Maybe like a funny cat video or something like that, or someone doing some pranks? How do you think it would fare if you spent those 10 or 15 minutes before you go to bed reading Bhagavad Gita? How do you think that would change your consciousness as opposed to 10 or 15 minutes on Facebook? Would it be good?
Yes.
Yeah? So anyway, you get the idea. There's many different distractions. And in fact, Krishna says in chapter 2, text 60, just a verse, the next verse, Krishna says the senses are so strong and impetuous, O Arjuna, that they forcibly carry away the mind, even of a man of discrimination who is endeavouring to control them. So the senses are so strong that even if we're trying to control them, even if we're trying to restrain them, still they get the better of us. And I'm sure everyone's experienced that, myself included. Every day I think, I didn't succeed in being very strict in my spiritual life today. Let me try again tomorrow. But still, the mind and the senses, they get the better of us. And Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that even one of the roaming senses on which the mind focuses can carry away a man's intelligence. So even just one thing, just one sense becomes focused upon something, and then it can completely distract you. There are many different examples. In fact, we'll just go to text 62. Do you want to just go on to text 62? Just the next. If you just go back, then you can go on to the... Oh, you're on your computer now. Okay. Anyway, the point is that there's consequences that come when our mind and senses get the better of us. So Krishna describes these in chapter 2, text 62 and 63. So we'll just go through these. Okay, so we'll just go through the translation. Just the English. So Krishna says, while contemplating the objects of the senses, a person develops attachment for them. And from such attachment, lust develops, and from lust, anger arises. So in other words, when we think about something, perhaps it's, eating all the Kit Kats or whatever, for want of a better example, and you start thinking about them, you contemplate them, then you develop attachment for them. And you start thinking, I'm going to have to eat those Kit Kats. Then lust develops. In other words, I really want those. And then from lust, anger arises. So in other words, if you're contemplating about eating the Kit Kats and then you get back and then someone else has already eaten them, then you get angry because you're already meditating upon them. And then the next verse, Krishna says, text 63, he says, from anger, do we have it up there? He says, from anger, complete delusion arises. And from delusion, bewilderment of memory. When memory is bewildered, intelligence is lost. And when intelligence is lost, one falls down again into the material pool. So when we become angry, we kind of lose our intelligence. We can't think properly. Like they say, you see in red. When you get really angry, it becomes really hard to control yourself. And you just, they talk about things like crimes of passion. People sometimes, they murder their husband or they murder their wife, or just because they get so angry and they lose all sense of reasoning. And it all comes from just contemplating the senses, contemplating the objects of the senses. So therefore the point we're making is it is important to control our senses. And there are two ways to control our senses. So the first way we can control our senses is by the mechanical process, or by the yoga practice, which Krishna, Srila Prabhupada explained in the purport. And then the second way to control our senses, which is what this purport is all about, is by getting a higher taste. So we'll explain those in a minute. So firstly though, we're going to go through the mechanical process, or the yoga process. Prabhupada refers to it in the purport. He says, similarly, sense restriction by some spiritual processes like Ashtanga Yoga in the matter of yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana is recommended for less intelligent persons who have no better knowledge. So in other words, the yoga process, or Ashtanga Yoga, Ashta means 8 and Anga means like limb. So the 8 limb process of yoga. Generally in the Western world, what is taught is just 2 parts, which is pranayama, which is breathing, and asana, the sitting postures. But actually there's 8 altogether. So there's yama, number 1, then there's 2 niyama, then 3 asana, 4 pranayama, 5 pratyahara, 6 dharana, 7 dhyana, and 8 samadhi. So yama is also has 5 other different parts. So one is ahimsa, which is non-violence. One has to practice non-violence. Satya, truthfulness, one has to practice. Asteya, non-stealing. One shouldn't steal. Brahmacharya, continence, one should practice celibacy. And then apavigraha, absence of greed. So this is the first stage of yoga, yama. And then there's niyama, which is practice of virtues. So the virtues are socha, purity, then santosh, peacefulness, then tapas, discipline, which is what we're speaking about tonight, then swadhyaya, study, especially studying the sacred text like Bhagavad Gita, and then ishvara, pranidhana, surrender to God, surrender to the Absolute. So even before you can start the asana, the third one is asana, the sitting postures, even before you can start practicing the sitting postures, first you have to practice all of these disciplines and these virtues. And then after asana, then you have pranayama, which is breathing. Then 5 pratyahara, withdrawal of the senses. Then 6 dharana, concentration. Then 7 dhyana, meditation. And then 8 samadhi is trance. One becomes fully absorbed. So the whole point of all of the different sitting postures and the breathing is to make the mind more peaceful so that we can actually be absorbed in the Supreme. This is the process of Ashtanga Yoga. But as Prabhupada said, that this process is mechanical, because in other words, we may be restraining ourselves from doing certain things at the moment, but we still have a taste for doing them. So Prabhupada gives the example that sometimes a doctor, he recommends to a patient, okay, you have to restrain yourself from certain types of eatables. Perhaps, you've got high cholesterol, so you have to restrain from eating fatty things, milk products, cheese, butter, different things like this. So you have to stop eating them. But still you have a taste, still your mind wants to eat them, but the doctors told you shouldn't eat them, so you don't. So it's mechanical. In other words, you still want to do it, but you're mechanically keeping yourself away. So the point is that, we can practice this type, and we can make some advancement like this, but if you really want to stop sense enjoyment or material enjoyment, then you actually have to get a higher taste. Prabhupada says in the purport, one who has tasted the beauty of Krishna loses his taste for dead material things. So, another example is like, let's say for instance, okay, if I said to you, I'm going to take your car away from you, right? Who would like me to take their car away from them? Rama. You've come in a car tonight. If I say, give me your car, give up your car, what are you going to say?
I'll think about it.
You think about it? Really? Okay, let me ask someone else who's a bit more attached to their car. Jagannath Ashri, if I said, give me your car, what are you going to say?
Go get yourself one.
Go get yourself one. So in other words, you're going to say, no way, hit the roads, on your bike. But if I say, give me your car, and I'll give you an even better car, what car would you really like to have?
Do you have to ask?
A what? Okay, I do ask. Yeah, I'm asking. Everyone wants to know, what car would you really like to have if you had as much money as you had in the world?
Tesla.
Tesla.
Driverless car.
A driverless car? You mean a chauffeur?
Now you have driverless car.
No, I'm just joking. Okay, let's say for instance a BMW. Right, if I say give me your car and I'll give you a top of the range BMW, what would you say then? You'd take it, yeah. So in other words, you can give something up if you're getting something to replace it with, and especially something better. So when we're getting a higher taste, we can automatically give up dead material things. So one thing is that we have to have an engagement, and it has to be a better engagement. Just like if you have children, if your children are naughty, like my sister, she says sometimes when the children are naughty, she sends her kids to sit on the naughty step. Does anyone here have a naughty step in their house? So, if the children are misbehaving, you say, right, go to your room and don't do anything. Just get out of my way, get out of my sight, I don't want to see you, or go and sit on the naughty step. Right, that's one way of dealing with a naughty child. You send them out the classroom, right? But then because the child naturally wants to do things and it wants to create mischief, if you send it to the naughty step, it's only going to last for some time. So another way of dealing with a naughty child is you say, okay, I want you to come and help your dad in the garden. I want you to weed. When I was younger, I had to weed the drive. Not because I was naughty, although sometimes I was. But just, so therefore you could say, okay, I want you to weed the drive, and I want you to pick up all the leaves in the garden, and then I want you to, to water the plants. So you give them some engagement. This is, a better way to deal with a child because, well, we don't want to extend the analogy completely, but the point is if you give them something better to do, if their senses are engaged, it stops them engaging in mischief. So sometimes it's described that the mechanical process of yoga is a bit like that. It's a bit like sitting on the naughty step. It's a mechanical way. So Prabhupada says here that it's recommended for the less intelligent persons who have no better knowledge. But one who has tasted the beauty of the Supreme Lord Krishna in the course of his advancement in Krishna consciousness no longer has a taste for dead material things. Therefore, restrictions are there for the less intelligent neophytes in the spiritual advancement of life. And again, the point is given that the devotees in Krishna consciousness, they utilize their senses. We don't say don't utilize your senses, but we only engage them for the service of Krishna. So when we sing, if we want to sing and dance, we sing and dance for Krishna. If we want to eat nice foodstuffs, we eat foodstuffs that have first been offered to Krishna, which is prasadam. If you want to listen to music, then listen to music, kirtan, or whatever it is, you get the idea. And therefore we emphasize, especially in the beginning of spiritual life, more on the do's than the do-nots. There's the rules and the regulations. So the do's are that we say, chant Hare Krishna, read Bhagavad Gita, take food that's been offered to Krishna. We emphasize more on these things, because if we engage in these things, then we automatically lose our taste for doing the other things, which may distract us from spiritual life. Both of them have to be there. We do have to follow certain restrictions. But the main thing is that if we just engage our senses in Krishna's service, if we engage our hearing and we engage our tongue in chanting, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, then we do get a higher taste and we automatically lose our attraction for material enjoyment. Different devotees may have different examples. Like myself, I had an example that before I came to Krishna consciousness, I was smoking. And I was smoking cigarettes, and I was also smoking some funky cigarettes as well. And I tried to give up smoking, both normal cigarettes and funky cigarettes, but I hadn't been able to do it, actually. I tried many times because it was interfering with things like my studies and things like that, and I was spending too much money, and I didn't want to do it anymore. So, I tried to give it up, but I couldn't. But when I started practicing Krishna consciousness, particularly when I started practicing it seriously, and I started chanting a prescribed number of rounds every day, I started offering my food to Krishna, then very quickly I gave up smoking. I gave up intoxication with no problem at all. No problem at all. And, and I haven't had any desire to do it since, in the 17 years or so that I've been practicing Krishna consciousness. We've also given the example of, I have one friend who, before he started practicing Krishna consciousness seriously, and he actually joined the ashram, he joined the temple, he'd been trying to follow different, practices that we follow, the 4 regulative principles, and he'd been having trouble following them. So at one point he said to himself, he said, I'm not even going to try and follow these 4 regulative principles now, but I'm just going to chant Hare Krishna 16 rounds a day. And as soon as he started chanting Hare Krishna 16 rounds a day, within 2 weeks he'd stopped all of his intoxication and he moved into the temple. So it's something practical. We've all had some experience that we get a higher taste. We lose our attraction for sensual enjoyment, for material enjoyment, the more we engage in Krishna consciousness. And the example is given that if you're full, like right now, who's hungry here? Put your hands up if you're getting a bit hungry. I'm getting a bit hungry. I hope you are, because we're cooking for all of you. If you're not hungry yet, you have to sing and dance enthusiastically in the kirtan. But you know what it's like? Sometimes, when you're really hungry, you get what they call hangry. This is a word in the dictionary, hangry, which means when you're really hungry, then you actually start to get angry. I'm not sure if anyone else is like that. Like myself and my wife, sometimes when we come back from work, if we're both getting a bit hungry, we get a bit hangry and we get a bit snappy with each other. And then I'll say, I'm sorry, I'm getting a bit hangry here. And she knows, okay, And similarly, she'll say to me, sorry, I'm getting a bit hangry. So we know, okay, now it's time to eat before we snap each other's heads off, But once you've eaten your meal, when you're full, you can't eat anymore. You don't even want to eat anymore. Even if someone comes and gives you your most favourite preparation. Eka, what's your favourite preparation, your favourite food stuff?
Very hard to say.
Just give me one. Just give me one example.
A good samosa.
A good samosa, okay. So, what's your favourite samosa?
Curd and spinach.
Curd and spinach, yeah, I like those as well. Of course, a curd and tomato are very nice. Yeah, okay, so if you've just eaten a meal, right? Are you hungry now?
A little bit.
If I come and offer you a curd samosa now, what are you going to say?
Yes.
Yes. Now, if I offer you a curd samosa, when you've eaten maybe too much, you can't eat anymore, you're completely full, what are you going to say?
I'll put in my tiffin and take
Smart. Save it for later. Yeah, that's good thinking.
I'll say no.
But if I say, no, you have to eat it now, you can't take it away with you. Either you eat it now or it stays here. What are you going to say?
Say no.
No, yes. We're labouring the point, but you get the idea. When you're full up, you don't want to eat anymore. So when we become so full in Krishna consciousness, when we've tasted the beauty of Krishna, as Prabhupada says, and when we've experienced the bliss, the happiness that comes from engaging in devotional service, from chanting Hare Krishna, from associating with devotees, from reading Bhagavad Gita, we no longer want to engage in material enjoyment anymore. Because it loses its taste, You don't want to do it anymore, and actually it becomes distasteful. When you've actually experienced spiritual happiness, when you engage in material activities, actually it becomes distasteful. It becomes distasteful, but still, even though sometimes we have experienced happiness in spiritual life and Krishna consciousness, still we do sometimes, we fall down, we slip up on the path, and we fall into bad habits again. But it doesn't satisfy us. It doesn't satisfy us. So how do we get this higher taste in Krishna consciousness? Can we have some suggestions? How do we get the higher taste? We want to get the higher taste. How do we get it? Ramai, give me some. By practicing, by chanting. Yes, Julian.
Kirtan.
By kirtan, by engaging in lots of kirtan, we get a higher taste. Vrinda.
Devotional service.
By engaging in devotional service. Yeah.
By reading Shastras.
By reading the Shastra like the Bhagavad Gita. Yeah, what else?
Rounds.
Sorry?
Rounds.
By chanting our rounds, yeah?
Association.
By associating with devotees. That's a very important one, actually. By associating with those who actually have a taste in Krishna consciousness, then we get a taste ourselves. Every day I listen to one devotee, and I thoroughly and highly recommend you listen to him. If you've never listened to him, you've wasted 100% of your life. So there's one very nice devotee called Vaisheshika Prabhu, who's in California, ISKCON Silicon Valley. They have a temple there. And every day, my wife and I, we listen to his classes, we listen to him speaking the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. And every day when I listen to him, because he has such a taste for Krishna consciousness, I just feel completely transformed. If I'm feeling a little bit down, or maybe I'm enthused, or, you know, in my spiritual life, as soon as I listen to him just for a few minutes, I become completely transformed and I think, yes, I want to take my spiritual life more seriously. It's because he's got such a taste, he's got a higher taste, and therefore when you associate with those with a high taste, you get it. So that's a nice one, association. How else do we get the higher taste? We've had chanting, we've had reading, we've had association. Prasadam, yes, that's a very good one. Taking prasadam, food that's been offered to Krishna. Because no matter what mood we're in, sometimes we're not so enthusiastic to hear the philosophy, sometimes we're not so enthusiastic to chant our rounds, but very rare are we not in the mood to take prasadam. Always. Jagannath Eshri, you were going to say something?
Serving.
Serving.
Especially cleaning.
Cleaning.
Yes, because the more you clean,
Uh-huh.
the more you clean Krishna's temple, the more it helps to clean your heart.
Uh-huh.
Just like Lord Caitanya,
Mm-hmm.
when he actually asked the devotees to clean the temple.
Mm-hmm.
Although they were cleaning, just like in Vrindavan or the gopis, they keep in Krishna's palace.
Uh-huh.
They keep on cleaning and cleaning and cleaning, always really clean.
Mm-hmm.
And Lord Caitanya, when he had the competition with the devotees, and said, "Well, clean the temple." And
Mm-hmm.
when we clean the temple, he said, "But the one who actually collects most of the dust is the purest devotee." And among all the devotees, Lord Caitanya collected all the dust. And then we cleaned the temple again and collected all the dust. So the more we clean the temple, the more we clean our hearts. So I personally, we did the Maha cleaning last week.
Yes.
And it's a very purifying service. It's really, really purifying. You might see it as a Madhyarika service, but it's actually really purifying.
Yeah. Yeah, it was very nice actually. Last weekend we had a Maha clean here in the temple. Some of us, we came together and we decided to spend an afternoon, or 2 hours actually. We spent 2 hours just cleaning the whole temple from top to bottom, and it was very nice. It was very nice. Yeah. So there's many different ways to get the higher taste, but the main way is that we have to engage our senses in the service of Krishna. So there's 9 different processes of devotional service: hearing about Krishna, chanting about Krishna, remembering Krishna, serving the lotus feet, worshipping Krishna in the temple, praying to Krishna, becoming the servant, becoming the friend, surrendering everything to Krishna. But the 2 most potent are Shravanam and Kirtanam, hearing about Krishna and chanting about Krishna, and especially chanting his holy names. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And the more and more we just continuously practice this hearing and chanting, particularly the Maha Mantra, the more and more we'll lose our attraction for material enjoyment and we'll gain a higher taste. But we shouldn't worry if we're not always getting the higher taste, because it's described that, like in a riverbank, or going over a river, there's 2 sides of the riverbanks, right? There's one side here and there's the other side here. Now, for a riverbank to run, or a river to run very smoothly and constantly flowing, it has to have 2 riverbanks. If it only has a riverbank on this side but not that side, then the river just floods into the field, and then the water stays there and becomes stagnant. And similarly, if there's no riverbank on this side, the water overflows this side, and then it stops and becomes stagnant. Both riverbanks have to be there. So sometimes in spiritual life, even if we are practicing it seriously, sometimes we're not feeling so connected. Sometimes we feel really connected and everything is blissful. Chanting Hare Krishna is blissful, associating with devotees is blissful, And sometimes it's not, it's the opposite. And we think, I don't want to chant Hare Krishna, I don't want to read Bhagavad Gita, I don't want to go to the temple. Who's ever experienced that before? So it's important that we have both feelings there, because if we only ever feel connected to Krishna, this is called Sambhoga, then what happens is we take it cheaply. You know? We become complacent. If every time we just chant Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, we're rolling around in ecstasy, we just think we can just turn it on, you know? And we'll take it or leave it as we please. Easy come, easy go. You know? So, but similarly, if we're never feeling connected, if we're feeling always separated from Krishna, so every time we chant we're not getting any taste, we're not getting any bliss, we're just feeling separated all the time, eventually we'll think there's nothing in this. This process doesn't work, so then you'll just stop it. But if you have both things, sometimes you're feeling connected to Krishna, but then Krishna's not there. Have you ever experienced that actually you can take shelter of Krishna more when you're not feeling connected? Like, you know, when you just feel Krishna's not there, so you chant even more with sincerity. Prabhupada says like we should chant like a baby crying for its mother. The baby is completely helpless and dependent upon the mother, so it's really crying. So we have to chant like this: Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Please, Krishna, please help me feel connected. Help me to get some attraction for chanting. Help me to, get some higher taste. So we have to chant in this mood. So both things have to be there: connection and separation. And then in this way, the river of devotional service will run very, very nicely. So, just to summarize, yes, we should restrain our senses. There's the two processes to restrain. There's the mechanical process and the process of the higher taste. But the real way and the real symptom, because we're talking about the characteristics of a self-realized person, the real symptom is that one who's actually spiritually advanced, they lose their taste altogether for material enjoyment, and they're only attracted to engaging in spiritual activities. So it's important to control them, even from a material point of view, if we want to be successful. Like we said, you have to be disciplined, you have to be self-controlled, so especially in spiritual life. So if we're finding that we're not getting a higher taste, perhaps we need to try and control our senses a little bit more, and the best way to control them is to engage them constantly in Krishna's service. Okay, we're going to stop there. Srila Prabhupada Ki. Are there any reflections from the anything we've said tonight that has caught anyone's attention? Something that they're going to take away from the session? Something that they're going to remember? Anything at all? Okay, Sheila. Okay.
Is that 15 minutes before you go to bed? And then Facebook, I'm going to...
Very nice. Okay, that's a good one. So Sheena was saying that instead of spending 15 minutes before she goes to bed looking on Facebook, she's going to spend 15 minutes reading the Krishna book. Right? You've just got the Krishna book. How are you getting on with reading the Krishna book, by the way?
Not great because of the phone incident.
Oh, of course.
Because I had it online as well, which I could in work. But that went. And that night I actually haven't opened it. I opened it and read the first 2 pages.
Nice. Actually, you can. There's one nice website or one little app you can get for your phone. It's called Be a Sage, page by page. And what it means is sometimes you look at these books, like Bhagavad Gita is 700 verses, and the page number, there's about 850 pages in here. So who's ever looked at the Bhagavad Gita and thought, I just don't have time to read that, it's too big. But if you've got a big project, you can split it down into sizable chunks. So this little app, Be a Sage page by page, it tells you how many pages you need to read each day if you want to read Bhagavad Gita in a week, or a month, or 6 months, or a year. You can just work out how many pages you need to read each day for all of Prabhupada's books. So Srimad Bhagavatam is 18,000 verses. It's 60 volumes. So if you want to read Srimad Bhagavatam, in 1 year, you have to read 41 pages a day. So, and then you can split it up. If you want to read it in 3 years, whatever, you can work out how many it is, like this. So 15 minutes every night, reading Krishna book, then you'll be able to finish it in no time. So thank you for sharing that with us. Anyone else? Something they've heard they'd like to reflect back? Vinay?
There's some time you feel a higher taste, you feel like you're so much connected to Krishna. And this next day you feel like, oh, I haven't done anything. It comes and go again and again.
Yes.
And then you run after that higher taste. You felt, the last day, this last week when the incident happened. About it. So when I got the phone, I said, it's like Krishna took Hiranyakashipu Nrsimha avatar to kill the Hiranyakashipu. It's like a thought to take to actually take all the sorrow from Bhakta. It feels like I was so connected. I was crying, literally crying. He's always with us.
Nice.
He's always looking after us. I mean, not a single time. Just on the same day, he took action. Without knowing us, we thought in the temple, our phone gone, our things gone, and he actually took action. Everything. It feels like so much connected. I was very trying for that.
That's great.
Yeah.
So that last point that we're making about sometimes we feel disconnected and sometimes we feel connected, but we shouldn't worry. When we're feeling disconnected, we should strive even more. And similarly, when we are feeling connected, we shouldn't take it for granted, you know? Thanks for sharing that. Any other reflections? Julian?
Yeah, I mean, it's same point, I guess. I kind of, when I go away from devotees association, I appreciate the devotees association, and like, especially if I go back where it's completely foreign as a concept, at least on general level, then you just, you feel how much you've learned, kind of, and then you're happy to share it with everyone else, because they have no clue at all about that, and about Krishna and Krishna consciousness in general.
Nice.
And they're interested, and you see how they're interested in people. And so the separation, between being among the devotees, I feel it when I go away more severely. Then I'm being here all the time. I kind of sometimes take it cheaply, as you said, because I'm always here. It's always one hand away. I just come down and devotees are here, or like the temple is here.
So it's like they say, absence makes the heart grow fonder. When we're too much, we've got the association of devotees all the time. We maybe take it for granted, and then when we're away from the association of devotees, we appreciate them even more. So it's important principle to remember in spiritual life that it's not that we should always be feeling really happy and blissful in one sense. Even those who are on the topmost platform of spiritual advancement, they're not feeling connected to Krishna all the time. They're feeling like, where is Krishna? Prabhupada said the Goswamis, they were walking around Vrindavan saying, where is Krishna? Not, I have Krishna, where is Krishna? Like this mood of separation. Thanks for sharing that with us. Any other final reflections? Yes, Ranjit.
Even in the mood of separations, while traveling, we can't see, actually in this country, in India, anywhere we can see a Krishna temple. Every area or each street has a temple. But in here, this place here, to see Krishna deity, you have to wait Saturday and Sunday. Other days, it will be difficult for the devotees also. So Krishna says in the 10th chapter, the opulence. So he's everywhere. He's the taste of water. He's the sun. He's the moon.
Nice.
So when we understand this, like Krishna is never away from us. We are actually telling we are getting separated from Krishna. Actually, Krishna is with us, so we have to come out of that mood that Krishna is away from us. Actually, Krishna is next to us.
Nice.
In everything.
That's a really nice point. Thanks for sharing that. Actually, for one who has the eyes to see, Krishna is always with us. And like you said in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna gives different ways that we can see him. He says he's the light of the sun and the moon. Of bodies of water, he's the ocean. And like this, we can see Krishna everywhere. So the problem is not that Krishna's not there, but the problem is that we're not there because our mind has taken us away, Like the sun's always there, but sometimes it's covered by the clouds. So our uncontrolled senses in our mind, they're kind of obscuring the sun of Krishna sometimes. So that's a nice point. Krishna is always with us, but we have to train ourselves to be able to see that. Thank you. Okay, I think, Jem, I think shoot one last reflection.
It quite struck me actually when you said sometimes it's easier to take that to Krishna when we're in distress.
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually true, because the mentality we've got, especially in this material world, is, if we're happy, then we're good. But when we're not happy, then that's a time where we tend to think, oh, Krishna, please help me.
Mm.
I got stuck in traffic this morning, and I was like, oh, Krishna. But it's a very, and then I was just reflecting on what you said, and I was thinking about the prayers of Queen Kunti when she said, oh, Krishna, please, keep on giving me misery, keep on giving me distress, so I can always think about you.
Yeah.
But it's difficult to, like Ranjit Prabhu said, we need to come to the platform of always thinking about Krishna, and everything belongs to Krishna.
Well, one thing that's, like you're saying, it's difficult sometimes. We're experiencing suffering, or we're experiencing some misery, and we're experiencing some disconnection, and therefore sometimes we lose faith. But the important point to remember is that if we do stick to the process, Krishna, he reciprocates. And he reciprocates in such a way that you realise he is there. Like we had an incident, I don't want to talk about it while we're live on air, but we had an incident last week in the temple, and then something that happened on Monday, a phone call I received, completely, really increased my faith in Krishna that much more, 1,000-fold. I'll tell you all what it is when we're not online. I don't really want to say it online. But the point is that Krishna does reciprocate. He does let us know he's there. So then, when our faith is increased, so that even then, when we're in times of distress, when we're feeling not connected, we have faith that Krishna is there, and if I just stick to the process, he will reciprocate, and I will feel connected again. Like you say, it's hard, but if we stick to the process, Krishna reveals himself, and our faith is increased, so even in the hard times, we can still stick to it.
And I believe, especially in the hard times, we can see what Krishna is doing for us.
Yeah.
In the hard times.
Yeah, like they say, hindsight is better than foresight. Sometimes we can look back and realise why Krishna did something. At the time, we may not appreciate it. Okay, one last thing, Julian, you were going to say?
Yeah,
just 1 second.
Sorry, in the good times, you can just be grateful for the
Yes.
good things, and by so doing, you can reflect on the good things you have that Krishna provides you.
Nice.
With. So that's how, in the good times,
Yes.
you stay connected. And
Nice.
that's my realization.
Very good. Yeah, we should always be grateful. Sometimes Krishna consciousness is described as the yoga of gratitude. Thank you. Last reflection, Prabhu Mataji.
Prabhu, I feel even the disconnection what we have from Krishna when we are in some misery or in some trouble, that is also a drama played by Krishna to get us more connectivity with him, to get more closer to him.
Yes.
So I feel that is also a drama played by him.
Yes, that's a fact. Yeah, Krishna is increasing our connection with him. Sometimes, like if you have a baby, you take the rattle away from the baby, he wants it more, like that. And then you just show him a little bit, show the rattle, then it really wants it, So Krishna's like that. He appears from, just jumps out and he appears before us, and then, oh, Krishna, and then he goes, oh, where is Krishna? Where is Krishna? So if we want that connection, we have to be constantly engaging our mind and hearing and chanting about Krishna. And on that note, we're going to stop and we're going to do some more chanting of Hare Krishna. Okay, Srila Prabhupada ki, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is ki, Nitai Gaura Premananda. So you can just sit where you are, or if you want to get up and dance, you can get up and dance as the kirtan gets going. You want to play the drum? Can you just put the Hare Krishna mantra up on there, please? Shri Krishna